Good evening, ne'er-do-wells. Welcome to Detention, where you think about what you've done. Today, we are gloriously excited to have Heather Jackson here in Detention with us. Heather Jackson, if you do not know her, is a multiple Ironman and 70.3 champion. She has stood on the podium at the Ironman and Ironman 70.3 World Championships, won the Wildflower Triathlon 4 years in a row, trained for the national team in 2 other sports that aren't triathlon, and won more races than we have time to recount here.
Jackson came to triathlon after competing at the highest levels of women's hockey, playing Division I for Princeton University, while also training for the USA national team in the hopes of making the 2006 Olympics. She completed her first Ironman in 2007 at Lake Placid, little known fact, qualifying for Kona on her first go. She's also taught English overseas in Thailand and was training to make the 2010 Olympic Games in cycling before committing to triathlon full-time back in 2009. In the last 12 years, she has cemented her legacy as a legend in the sport. Heather Jackson, we are so happy to finally have you here in Detention.
Oh, thank you guys. That was amazing. So good to chat with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
It's so good to see you.
So happy to see you here. So we know that you've probably spent time in detention. That's why we like you so much. So we're going to skip over that normal first question of ours, but we're probably sure that you have spent some time in hockey detention, also known as the penalty box. Can you tell us the story of your longest stay in the penalty box during a hockey game and what you did to land yourself there?
I can't wait for this answer.
Are you like recalling a specific story I've told you, or you?
No. I have no idea. I have a follow-up story about one of our coaches, but I have no idea about you.
Okay. I can think of the best one. Yes, I've spent time in both detentions. I forget what grade it was, but it would have been 5th grade probably, or 6th grade. I got in like a massive fight in the playground or schoolyard with this little kid that happened to be our neighbor, and he was like shoving me, and so I shoved him back in front of one of the buses and got promptly brought into they were like pulling up to take us home, but my mom's watching. I'm sure she remembers that because this kid's name, Johnny Norman, was just a brat. But I mean, my mom, who's one of the strongest women I know, taught me, oh, they pushed you, did you push them back? So that is the attitude that I was raised under.
I love it. You literally threw another kid under the bus.
Right.
Well, we were like back and forth. I think it was a race to like be first in line to get on the bus, because everyone would race to get the back seat of the bus, because whenever you would go over speed bumps, you could do the thing where you fly up and try to like, hit the ceiling. But yes, that was a memorable moment. But in the penalty box, my senior year of ice hockey playing for Princeton, we actually made it to the Frozen Four, which was huge. Like Princeton had never done that. And it was out at Minnesota Duluth, UMD. So we had actually we drove to almost every game. We got to fly out to Minnesota to play in the semis. And I think we knew we were losing. There was only like 30 seconds left in the game. And someone pushed or like hit someone from behind on my team. And I just like went after them, and it actually ended up in a full benches on both teams, like cleared the ice and just started going at it. It was pretty crazy. And it was our final game of the year. It would have been my senior year, actually. It's the last game I ever played for Princeton. It was an all-out bench clearing brawl. Really went out with a bang.
This is so much better than our usual, like, I've never done anything wrong answer.
I know, we've gotten 2 big ones out of the way right away. I love it.
Yes.
Wait, so Bag, what is your story about a CBCG coach? That's not me. I did not.
Yeah, so I was going to run this by HJ. Like what? Yeah. Molly spent a lot of time on the ice. You can really.
Yeah, I am very good at ice skating and all above water sports.
One of our other coaches, Josh, has played a lot of hockey. He's a really good hockey player, but he was like a forward winger, and like was sort of the goal scorer on his team. And the other team was doing what you usually do to the goal scorer, which is just harass. And Josh got super frustrated, picked up the puck and threw it into the crowd.
Oh my God. That is awesome, actually.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, he went to a penalty box called disqualified.
Yeah.
The permanent penalty.
Like, please leave the building also.
Yes, you're done.
That's amazing. So we have been doing this for over a year now, which seems insane, but is actually true. This show is a direct result of the time that we've been trying to figure out like what to do during the pandemic. So can you tell us a little bit about what you have been doing this year that you wouldn't have had time to do otherwise? Like what's been your pandemic project, if you've had one?
I know, right? Pandemic. For us, like, maybe it was you I was talking about the other day, like last year for Wadi and I, and just close family or friends that we got to spend a little bit of time with, like my sister and then Eric Lagerstrom and Paula were kind of small little quarantinis, but like actually loved last year. I don't know if it fell just at maybe the right point in my career where it was like, okay, a little refresher, a little step back. Wadi and I did a ton of gravel riding, not being concerned so much with like high performance and intervals and efforts, just like literally go ride our bikes and get lost for hours in the woods. And so we got to camp a ton, explore all around Bend that we hadn't even done yet. And we've been here for almost 10 years. So same with down in Tucson, we got to explore Patagonia a lot. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed last year. And it was a really good, just refresher before. This year has been a little bit more of a rough start for me, just not in any serious way, just with races and getting back in the groove of more high performance. But last year, I would say, pandemic project was gravel riding, exploring, getting back out into nature, enjoying time with Wadi and some close friends and family. So it was good. It was fine. Just trying to, stay positive in what was obviously not a good time.
Awesome. We just got a question from chat that actually anticipated our very next question, which is awesome.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I know. Great work, Jason Williams. Amazing. You did Coeur d'Alene this past weekend, and we're, as you put up in a post, having a really strong day up until mile 88 when you had a complete tire failure, like the tire just like delaminated and exploded. This particular race had a really high rate of DNFs. What words of advice would you have for athletes right now that are feeling disappointed and struggling to put those feelings somewhere?
Yeah, it hasn't been obviously the easiest 48 hours for me either. It's so tough. You put so much time and effort into one day. You prepare the best you can and try to give everything towards this one event and go into it. Obviously ready to execute and do what you wanted to do there and try to hit goals. And it can be tough, obviously, if that doesn't happen. So I think my advice is just like, I always try to see the bigger picture. It's at the end of the day, it's racing. We get to do this. It's supposed to be fun. I know it's not fun if your day didn't go as planned. A lot of people didn't finish, and I don't think any single person should be hard on themselves if you didn't finish on Sunday. That was brutal conditions. In fact, could have been dangerous for some people. So like health should come first. If it was a matter of heat stuff, like you shouldn't feel bad about not finishing on a day like that. Or like, oh, I could have been tougher and pushed through. I mean, some people did, but it also isn't any like weaker that you didn't, I think, on a day like that. It was literally so hot. So, and there's always, it's racing. There's always another race. There's family, there's friends, like health, all these other things that at the end of the day, just try to keep that in mind. And then also just use maybe disappointment or frustration or sadness or like feeling like you let your team down or whatever it is, fuel you for the next one and just be more, excited and ready for that one and remotivated. Like, okay, it didn't work, put it behind you. Don't dwell on it. It's a new day and just, looking forward, using maybe what you learned on the day. Maybe you learned nutrition or hydration, or you needed more salt or this or that. Maybe I will always now carry a tire, not just tubes. So like you can always learn from whatever the day was, and then just try to stay positive. It's just racing. So there's so many other things, and it's always, I think helpful to keep that in mind. Like, and if you were there in person, for me, it was one of the first races back that was like, felt so normal. Like we saw so many good friends, like everyone was out cheering. It was awesome. So that was a good positive.
Yeah, it's a great roster of things to like takeaways as as a way to make yourself, as to realize like, okay, this really was a very positive experience.
Yeah.
The heat really was kind of the defining moment or the defining feature of that race for a lot of folks. And we know that you've won Coeur d'Alene in another really hot year. Mike Wadley also I saw this question coming, but can you tell us a little bit about how you prepare for hot races and why you think you've been so successful under those conditions?
Yeah, I mean, I feel super, super fortunate that Waddy and I have the, what's the word? Not potential, the chance to go between Bend and Tucson. And Tucson, we started going there primarily for the heat. And so I do purposely train in hot places when I prep for a hot race, like a Kona. That's why we started going to Tucson. So I think I have like a lot of practice or years training in these hot environments and get used to it and know what my body needs. And doing that, I know like taking in extra fuel or extra hydration, extra salt. So I have had that chance to practice it. It can be so tough if you don't say live in a hot place. So there are other things you can do. I also used sauna protocol, mostly prior to Tulsa, but I do think it was carrying over into these final like weeks in between the two. And that's just like 25 to 30 minutes a day in the sauna, teaching your body to sweat way earlier than maybe it naturally does. It can kind of stimulate that cooling. Your body will cool itself, and so it will break a sweat quicker and cool you down. And if you can like get it to do that quicker in a race, you're going to start cooling earlier. You're also going to, from that practice, like I was just saying, hydration strategies and replenishing electrolytes, things like that. So sauna, if you're in, say, like not a hot place, getting there early if you can, even just to get used to it, so it doesn't feel so like, overwhelming on race day itself. Purposely training in the heat of the day. So the last couple of weeks sitting into Coeur d'Alene, I wasn't, I guess, getting up at 6 a.m. and running here in Bend. It was still chilly then, but I would run at like 2-3 p.m. because I knew that's what it would be like on race day. So little things you can practice if you know that the race could be hot. I don't think anyone knew Coeur d'Alene was going to be like this though. So that's a whole other hard thing to deal with for sure.
So we're going to step into the Wayback Machine for some of these questions. You grew up playing hockey and soccer. What role did sport play in your life as a kid?
Oh man. Yeah, sport has been my whole life. It's crazy. Like when I get asked this question, I'm always like, I literally from when I could walk, and actually probably even before that, like I was probably racing, like crawling across the floor. I'm just so naturally competitive. And then my mom was a phys ed teacher. So she had us in every single sport you can think of. Minus swimming. So we grew up swimming in my data's backyard pool. So I knew how to like stay above water, but not like lap swimming or freestyle. So, but it's crazy. The skills I feel like I learned from literally all the different sports I've played. So hockey, soccer, tennis, basketball, softball, lacrosse, gymnastics, like we did horseback riding, it literally like you named skiing, downhill, snowboarding, I think a lot of that is just like neuromuscular development, like balance, coordination, eye-hand skills. And I don't put two and two together until I'm doing like a new sport or activity. And I'm like, oh yeah, I did this with hockey, or we used to do this in soccer. Or so I feel like I just grew up from age 2, 3, 4, already doing these different like physical movements or activities. And so for me, they're just something I've always done. And so it's, yeah. And it's played such a big role in my life, literally through all of my different schooling. It was always primarily about, okay, we're going to this school for this sport. We're going to go here because you can play with these people or this team. We're going to go to this tournament because this coach might be there. I mean, my whole life was based around performing athletically, and I'm so grateful to that now, like, and it's still going. And yeah, that's long-winded. I apologize, but no. It's been my life.
Yeah, no, a long answer is great. And like, such a good example of like being a generalist is a better path to being a really strong athlete. Like so many kids now are just like funneled into like one sport, but like there's a lot of research that's like kids who are generalists actually have a better path to success in like all aspects of their life.
100%. I 100% agree with that, because when you're just funneled in, especially if it's maybe more influenced by, say, a parent or a overseer, whoever, that like you're gonna maybe burn out or not want to do it because it's not necessarily your choice. Like I remember saying to my parents all the time, my brother was playing hockey and I'm like, I want to play, and they let me do that, or tennis. Like every single thing they just let us do what interested us or what we wanted to, and they made that possible. And so I'm forever grateful to them, because it wasn't, okay, you're doing this. Like it was always us begging to do something, and they would find a way. Being raised in a family of like 4 kids, we didn't have much money at all, and they would find a way to make it possible, even if we didn't end up continuing with it. I think I did gymnastics for only like a year and hated it. I hated like being in a leotard. My sister went on to being like a Division I gymnast, and she's like was incredible. But from that, it went to like my brother was playing hockey. I'm like, I want to be on the ice with him. So to them buying me all the equipment for that so I could do that, it was, I was so grateful, or so like, lucky in that sense that I had parents that did that for us, but that we got to try so many, different things.
Awesome. That's a very lucky situation.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how, so I grew up swimming, and so the transition to triathlon, it's like an individual sport to an individual sport, was pretty natural. I just kept paying attention to myself. But how, with your background in team sports, what do you think that has prepared you for as a professional in an individual sport? Like what do you think you've brought from the teams you've been on?
Yeah, I don't know if I've like brought anything to it. I think more in say like we've been lucky enough to be involved with teams within the sport. And part of that too is just coming from a team sports background. It was so weird for me. I remember the first few years I was like, oh my God, like you're not working together with a team. Like your performance is literally not dependent on anyone else. It's only what you can do. And that's a cool part because you're in full control. But at the same time, you don't have that same, like it's a different high. It's a different adrenaline rush when like everything comes together and like your line is clicking on the ice and passes are being made and goals are scored because like the 3 of you or the 5 of us, all that were out there were clicking, and on games where that happened, it was like magical. And then the days when it wasn't, it was the struggle of like, not what you were necessarily doing, but when things aren't clicking as a team, it's a totally different thing. And so coming into triathlon, I think I always find myself like cheering other people on, or like even competitors, because that's my nature. I came from that. I'm not like, I can't do the cutthroat, like, I don't know. So I think that's what I brought to it, of like, I want everyone to do their best out there, because I'm coming from this thing where we always try to raise everyone around us up so that everyone on the team is doing well. And so while triathlon is individual, I think try to find that somewhat in the sport.
Yeah, I can really see that how that has, one of the questions we'll get to later is that you've really been like a central figure in growing community in the sport. And, I'm guessing that that's a big part of that reason, like, that desire to like lift all the ships around you.
Totally. It's just, and also when you can share the journey with other people, it's so much more fulfilling and like fun, and you hear their stories, you share yours, like you can help one another. I can share what I've learned in the sport. I still learn so much from other people, just amateurs or pros alike, but like about what to do in certain races or courses or travel to get places. I mean, in our sport, everyone can learn from everyone else. And it's more fun. It's like, I could just be with Waddy and me and go to races and be like, oh, that was fun. Or like you can share it with hundreds of people. And that's makes the whole journey so fun for us.
Sticking to the Wayback Machine, so you went to high school at a small boarding school in New Hampshire, but you were a day student instead of a boarder, so you didn't live there at the school. Did commuting to school change your perspective of your high school or your experience there?
Oh yeah, that's like, it's so funny you say that because it was, yeah. So I went to the boarding school was in my town. So my parents would drop me off in the morning and pick me up at night. But there was definitely a difference between the boarders and the day students. And it's hard to describe when you're a high school kid, but it's like, we weren't, I wouldn't say looked down on, but it's a different vibe when you're not like in that boarding community. And so it definitely, at the time it was tough. Like high school is tough for anyone, I think. Such a weird time, like emotionally, mentally, physically, but like digesting, coming from maybe a background with not a lot. And my parents did everything they could to get me to go to this school. Financially, we were on tons of financial aid. My grandparents helped out, like just having that background versus these kids had like, yeah. I mean, I went to my high school class, like I went to high school, Mark Zuckerberg was in my high school class, like Kennedy, some of the Kennedys, some of the Bushes, like, so you're going to school with these kids who are like, their, uncle is the president, and you're just like, getting dropped off. Like my dad would drop me off in his state trooper car. And so you just feel as a high schooler, like, just like less, or I don't know, you're very insecure. I was very insecure. I was not very outgoing in high school. I was an athlete and that was my identity. And so I was like good when I was in the locker room or on the field or performing. But in that social scene, it taught me a lot of like, and I also think it's what's carried over. Waddy always says to me, like, never forget where you came from. And he means that in the sport of triathlon now. Like I was an age grouper coming up, like I still remember those days. And it's like, everyone's the same playing field. Like nothing defines you, money, like status, anything. And where I went to school was a very big, like making that clear. And so that those insecurities I had during that time in my life, I've still like made me very aware of like that sort of thing. So I think it taught me a lot. It was definitely I wouldn't say tough at the time. It's just, you're going through high school and you have that on top of like trying to study and like get good grades and get into college. But it was definitely another aspect growing up with that for sure. But hockey, I went to that school primarily for hockey so that I could go to a top collegiate program. So that was like, that made it possible for me. And that was, forever grateful again for that opportunity.
And before you became a professional athlete, you were a teacher for a while. How did you end up in that profession? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so and it's so funny as I'm mentioning high school time, which was this like, it's a weird, crazy time for anyone. And then I graduated college and got a job teaching high school. So I was 22 and got a job teaching ninth grade world history out in San Jose, California. And so I had just right after school, I graduated in 2006. Actually got a teaching job in Thailand through a program through my university. So I was abroad teaching English for a year, and that would have been 2007 into 2008. And I got back and I had been able to defer all my student loans for a year, but they were starting. I could only defer them for a year. So I was like, oh shit, I have to get a job. I had put my resume up on this like online forum or something and got a call or an offer for an interview. And I had to do an in-person like teaching demo to a class at this school. It's a private school out in San Jose. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know. But they were going to pay for my flight out. And I had never been off the East Coast. I was like, oh my God, I get to fly into San Francisco and see the Golden Gate Bridge. took the interview, flew out, did a demo. I was like, there's no way I got that job. And then they called and I got it. So that started in the fall of 2008 in San Jose. So in that summer, my sister Bifster and I drove cross country in my little, what did I have? A Volkswagen Jetta, packed to the brim, and drove out to San Jose, found a little apartment just down the street. And I was literally living in on my college futon. I don't think I had any other furniture for the first year. Just, teaching ninth graders, 14-year-olds, and I was 22. So it wasn't very easy.
It's amazing.
That's very mean of that department head to give you freshmen your first year of teaching.
Yeah, 5 sections of freshmen.
Oh my God.
That's what my little brother is doing now. I did not know that. That's amazing. He's
teaching.
Yeah, he's teaching freshman world history.
Oh my God, yeah. That's so funny. Let me know if he needs any curriculum, or I have all my stuff.
I'm sure he will.
But it's so funny now, because now that class that I taught, so that was 08 and 09. And so now what is that? Almost 13 years later. And some of my students still follow me, always message me, I'm friends with them on Facebook. And some of them have actually done some triathlons or send me photos of their finisher pics. And I'm it's amazing. It's so cool to see them now, because now they're, I don't even know, almost late 20s.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I know it's crazy thinking about the students. Yeah. You're like, oh my gosh, those students are having children in their early 30s. Oh my God.
And those students are Heather Jackson was my world history teacher.
Yeah, exactly. They were so stoked.
Oh, and now friends who have kids who I've seen watch grow up over the last 10 years, who were 2, 3, 4, and now they're freshmen. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I taught your age. And oh.
So that kind of touched on, you were kind of talking about the triathlon community around you, that you've now connected through teaching, through a bunch of other things. We've already heard just a little bit about why that's important to you. I'm going to throw a question at you that Michael Marks threw at some of us. What does heaven look like to you in terms of the triathlon community? Where would you like to take us?
Oh my God. Interesting. What does it look like in terms of
what's your ideal, where would you like to, whatever community that you engage with, what is your hope for it? What would you like to see it grow into? What feels oh, if only we could make blank?
No, that's a tough one. Oh man, on the spot. I mean, I think triathlon for me, it's especially given last year, I don't know if I'm going the right direction with this question, but if we could get back to how, and I'm biased because Wildflower is my favorite race, but the Wildflowers, when I first got into triathlon, and I feel it was more of a grassroots, more just not up and coming because it had been around, but it was not more fun either because I still just enjoy it so much, but it was a different vibe. And I think I feel that's what the gravel scene now is trying for, or heading towards, or trying to do as well. I know it's just kind of getting going, but if triathlon could merge back to that of it's about having fun. It's not about 10 Ironmans a year or whatever, this almost we're all type A mostly, but the training and this and that versus no, it is the journey. And I know that's a cliche saying and people always say it. It's enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. But now in the later stages of my career, and I look back and my best memories are some of those early days, camping at Wildflower, all the ocean sides, the things I remember, the after parties, the time with friends, the races are always amazing. And that's what you train for, but it's the things around it. And I think if we can keep that in mind and use that or have that as the focal point going forward in the sport and keeping it fun and doing these races for fun, enjoying them, enjoying the journey of getting to them, And I think it's actually especially coming off of last year, the few races I've done back so far, I think people are coming off of 2020 with that as well. Because it just seems like people are there to race, but it's more about, okay, we get to see people again and have fun and keep that in mind. And that's, I think, the ideal thing in our sport of like, it's fun. It's meant to be fun. And it's meant to be an event that everyone is training for and working hard towards and have these same shared goals. But you can get up every day and train with friends, meet people at the pool, like go for rides with people, meet up for jogs, like go to these races together. And that's what I think it's about. And just getting back to that is, yeah, be awesome.
Man, for me putting you on the spot, that was an amazing answer.
You okay?
That was incredible. I'm glad we got that on tape.
Yeah, that was really
that's gonna be like the sizzle reel.
Yep.
Just that answer.
Perfect.
So speaking of training with friends, I think anyone who follows you on social media often sees you training with a crew. Like you often have people who are like staying with you or camping with you and folks you're going out running with and swimming with and like just kind of going on adventures with. What do you look for in a training partner and like when and how often, I guess, do you prefer to train with other people versus on your own?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like our training buddies literally are so random and so natural. So it's so like tough for me to be like, I remember when I met Bag so long ago. Bag and Boudreaux were like my training buddies for so many years. We had the same coach, and I didn't know Bag or Boudreaux like prior, but all of a sudden you meet people and you either click with them or don't. And Bag and I became such fast friends. Like you either get along with people or not, or just, like certain people mesh and others don't. And we've been so lucky and so fortunate to just like stumble upon these friends that maybe I guess my point, I'm stumbling with words, has never been like, oh, like I need to find this sort of person to train with because my swim is weaker, or I need to run with this person because I'm focused on this or working on it. It's literally like, I think you develop these friendships, and that's what we're so grateful Wadi and I have this sport for. You meet these friends that are now going to be lifelong friends, and all of a sudden, like you're lifting each other up, training together day after day. And that's happened with so many people. Like Bag and Boudreaux are some of the earliest memories I have. Justin Dar, some of the other athletes, we all trained together early on. But then like Corby's, I've gone through blocks training with her, and you lift each other up towards Kona. Eric and Paula last year, like that was literally random. Like we obviously knew of them and were acquaintances, had met them at races, but Eric had reached out that he and Paula were looking to train in Tucson just to switch things up. They wanted to get out of the cold in Hood River area. And Wadi's like, yeah, our house is just sitting down there. Like, you're welcome to use it. It just sits there. And so they went down and were in our house for a few weeks before we got down last February. And it's just like, I guess it was lucky we meshed well because we ended up spending the next like 5 months together, but it was so random. It was just like we feel like lucky to be able to be like, yeah, we have a house in Bend, a house in Tucson, like, yeah, just stay in it. Or I know like, and then all of a sudden, yeah. And this happened recently with Fenella Langridge. She just got second on the weekend. She's British. She's been in the US since Challenge Miami, and she was training in Tucson. Keeping a long story short of how she was going to try to come to Bend to see Jay Dachari, who's up here. He's a physical therapist. And we're like, yeah, you're like, come on up to Bend. Like, she was trying to get a meeting with him. We have plenty of room. And that turned from coming up maybe just for like a week to try to see him to she's like started training. We really got along. She's an amazing swimmer. So for me, like to learn anything I can from her. And she had been interested in Ironman. So she's been kind of soaking up the longer distance stuff. And I've just been trying to help her with that. And then she went out on Sunday and she got second, which is in her first one on a hot day. So amazing. She did amazing. But that just like clicked. And it was like, she's been here a month now. So those have always been kind of like just how it happens. Not like, oh, we need to find it's like literally friends, like come train with us. Like, let's do this. And yeah, people become like lifelong training buddies, friends. And so
So a lot of people don't know that before you turned professional, you did 4 Ironman races, 2 Lake Placids and 2 Konas. What would you say to the 2007 you as she was standing on the beach getting ready for her first Kona?
Ooh. I don't know if I would change anything in my first Kona. My first Kona was literally hilarious when I think back. Like, I think I've told you this, but
Love this.
was when phones were not, our cameras were not on your phones. Like, you still would carry around those little, they were digital at that point, but like I had like a little Sony. I brought it in my pocket so I could get photos out on the bike course. Like at the turnaround, like up by Hobby, I stopped and took some of the ocean, and then so I carried a camera and like took a couple like photos on the bike, and just I went over with my girlfriend at the time. We were the 18 to 24 age group. We were roommates. This would have been the second or first year I had moved out to San Jose. We were training together. I think we were like, 22 or 23. We like shared a condo rental, or like actually we got hooked up with some sort of homestay. We shared a rental car. We got there. We had 2 bike boxes, and the only rental cars they had were these like convertible, those like long skinny ones, like Dodge Bullets or something like that. But we had to get 2 bike boxes in that thing, and I have photos of us. We stuck them like vertical up and down in the back seat. We're in the front, top down, like we're in Hawaii. It was like our first time. It was hilarious. So I wouldn't say anything to that one. The 2 age group years I raced it was like, still so just for fun, low key, like, super fun. So
That's great. I mean, like, what a great thing to be like, I don't want to change that experience.
Totally. I'm happy with that. Like, because I know like it can be so easy, even now as our sport's growing and it gets more serious, like earlier on, or people are like, come into it being like, I want to be a professional. Like, I want to turn pro. This is what I'm going after. When I first got into the sport, that wasn't even a goal. I didn't even know really difference. I had watched Kona and I was like, oh, I just want to do that race. It wasn't about, I didn't come into it being like, I want to be a professional triathlete. Like, I barely even knew early on what it was, like the order of the events or anything. It was just this like total like green entry. So yeah.
What do you try to preserve about that time in your racing now?
I always try to get back to that time, because that's when I think it's like the most fun. There's no pressure. There's so many other things now that come to my mind. Like, you're on the like start line, or like Sunday, for instance, it's like, I let my sponsors down. Like, I have to do social media. I have to like let people know, like all these other things that come with racing at a high level, which I'm also a big fan of the saying, pressure is privilege. And I really do respect that. And I'm like, okay, this is only going to last for so long. Like, what I get to do right now and where I am at in my racing and what I've been able to accomplish. And I am so grateful for this time. But those early days of like no pressure, no sponsors, nobody even knows who you are. They don't know your name. It's like a whole different vibe. And I try to channel that on start lines. Like, you get to do this. It's like another first year Wildflower. Like, this is going to be fun. Even before the races, Waddy's like, just have fun. There's no pressure. You have to remind yourself that, because it is easy to go to the like, people are watching, people care what you did, your result, sponsors care. Like, everyone's gonna be like, what happened? Like, there's these other things that you're like, oh my God, versus just like, oh my God, we get to race. Like, so trying to just like stay to that is a huge, part of the start line.
You may have just answered this, but all of us that have been like, making our lives in the sport now for like holy crap, we've been in the sport for like 20 years. What's something like central in your life that you have learned from triathlon?
Central. I guess, I don't know if I would say this is central, more just, I think, having been in the sport for so long now, like you're saying, it's like, early on, every little thing, like every training session, every training session, every race, it's like, it was do or die, like tears or like rejoicing if it was good or bad, versus just like, again, back to the cliche, it's the journey. It's like, it is what it is on the day, enjoying every single day. It's very, I guess, trying to get to your question, central to me of like every single day, it's a new day. We're so lucky to be alive and be here. You get one life, to make the most of every day and not to let one bad training session get you down, not to be down. Like, it's tough. Sunday was really tough for me. Like, I was so bummed. And I think I took, 24 hours, 48 hours, like some tears shed, but it's like, and there are days that are down. It's not like painting this picture. It's always like so happy and rosy, but it is like central to me to keep a positive attitude of every day is like, I hate the word a blessing, but it's like that word of like, we are lucky. We are here, live it, make the most of it. Like, there's no excuses not to. Like, and I choose to be happy. I choose to do what I want to do on the day and make the most of it. And that's central to me within this triathlon journey of like, okay, keep the bigger picture. There's friends we've made like that will be forever in our lives. Like you guys, like all the team members, like just, there's so many bigger things from this sport. And that is way more important to me and will always be more important to me than the actual like physical swimming, biking, running, and the races and the results and any of that. So
that is great advice for all of us. It's also going on the sizzle reel.
You're just racking them up. It's gonna be such an easy edit. It's gonna be awesome.
So last week we had the privilege of talking to cyclist extraordinaire Sean Waddy Watkins. We know that you dabbled in elite cycling before you decided that you were going to commit to the triathlon lifestyle. What do you take with you from the time that you spent training as a cyclist that you apply to your triathlon training?
Yeah, that was also a super cool time for me because I had just met Waddy. It was 2009 when I moved from San Jose area where I was teaching, put my notice in, moved down to San Diego with Waddy, and he was still racing the track at the time, like cycling extraordinaire. He was like, "Oh man, like you're so strong on the bike." Because I was a year out of hockey, so my quads were like triple the size. I could really, push the pedals. And he's like, "We have to get you on the velodrome." And so he introduced me to his coach at the time, who is rest in peace, Mark Whitehead, but he was like one of those old school coaches that I just absolutely loved. Like, that's how all my hockey coaches were, just like swearing, screaming. I don't think he was East Coast, but East Coasters will know what I mean when they're like, fuck, like F-bomb, like screaming at you. And that's motivating to me, not in a negative way, but like when they're like, "Is that all you fucking got?" And you're like, "No, I've got more." And so it was like, it was super fun time of just learning the velodrome, getting to ride on it. I had that raw power from hockey, so it came naturally. So it was like super exciting. Like he'd be like, "Just go out there." When they I did a bunch of the different velodrome events, like scratch racing or points racing. And he would be like, "When they swing up after a sprint, that's when you go." And it would be like, attack. And so learning that, and I raced kind of the road scene, some crits and road races for a year, some cyclocross. It was awesome just learning like bike handling and I guess all those skills, carrying that into triathlon. It was really, really fun. It's a different, that's obviously more of a team sport, not the same as soccer, hockey, but it's like you're out there with a bunch of women. I was unattached, so I was just alone, but still, like, you have the teams, the team tactics, and then it would be like me against the team. So I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm going off the front." But it was fun. Different style of fun than just triathlon, like swim, bike, ride.
Because of that background, you did come into triathlon as one of the strongest cyclists right off the bat. Like, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, who is this woman riding through the field?" But you did have to bring your running up to speed. Could you tell us a story of a breakthrough run performance and kind of what went into that?
Yeah, it was was definitely, yeah. Like I mentioned, I was definitely coming off hockey. I was a lot heavier, stronger, and not being like, oh, I was like big. I mean, I was bigger because of hockey. So it was very much muscle. I mean, we were in the weight room 3 times a week for like 20 years of my life. So having come from that, yeah, it's like watching a bodybuilder go to trying to run. If anyone has been watching the Olympic trials and you see all the runners and you're like, there's a reason they're lean and mean to move those lighter bodies fast around the track. I mean, triathlon's tough because you're trying to get that perfect body for 3 different sports, and swimmers look different than cyclists, than runners. So trying to find that combo for 3 sports is so difficult, for sure. So, I mean, the cycling, I had the legs, but yeah, I think my first couple half Ironmans I did, I don't know, I think my half marathon was like around 2 hours. I mean, I would bike the fastest bike split by like 10, 15 minutes and then walk a half marathon sometimes. So I knew something had to change. And I think, actually it was Wadi that explained to me the idea of the body to weight ratio and being like, okay, for running, it's different than cycling or say hockey. Like you're not hockey. And also I came from old school ice hockey where it's like, we need a carbo load. And I came from like a diet of like spaghetti and pizza before games, or just this typical, like I didn't know much about nutrition, and learning about fueling first for triathlon, but also just general body composition of trying to shift that a bit. So I really did, there were 3 or 4 years, I think it was like 11, 12, 13-ish, of focusing in of like, okay, yeah, there is a reason these people are running the fastest in our sport. And they were a little bit trimmer, a little bit less muscle. I had to cut back some muscle. So I stopped lifting. I used to squat like 180 pounds. Like I could probably do like 120 now. I actually haven't tried in a while, but I mean, it's like changing that muscle composition, leaning out, watching what I ate. And then I started seeing progress with my run. I ran like a 145, and then it went down. I think I was running 135 halves, and then I can't remember what race it was. I remember I broke 130 and I was like, oh my God, this is working. And I think once you see the progress, then it hooks you and you're like, I'm going to keep doing this. And that's where it can get like addictive, because you're like really focused in when you can see progress. And that's the great thing about the bike and run is you can see so much progress, versus say the swim has been so difficult for me because you can work so hard and maybe only see seconds gained. Versus for me, the run started to come, and I would see like 5-minute improvements. And it was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. So it was largely body composition. And then just as that came down, as my weight dropped a bit, I used to weigh like 145 all through college. I was like 145. My weight now is 120-ish. Kona, I get a little bit leaner. But for that, I really have to focus in. Again, that's like, it's part of it. It's like, Kona is going to be hot. The lighter you are, that will help with efficiency, but being aware of that in the sport now and knowing, okay, can we make these little tweaks to help? That's kind of, the journey. That was probably 2011 to 2014-ish. So, yeah.
So someone who's been in the sport for as long as you have, in racing since the days of diaper racing, you must have a pretty good idea now of what works for you in training. Can you tell us something that that you found has been really successful for you in your training for triathlon? Yeah,
it's so funny because I've been in it now. It's crazy because I feel like I just started, but it's been I don't know, 13, 14 years now. So I definitely have gone through all of these like cycles of, let me try this, let me try that, let me try high volume, let me try more speed work, I've tried these different things of like, okay, no, I know I can be a faster runner if I do this. And you don't know till you try. And so I feel like I've been trying all these different things, and then you go back to the ones that do work. And I think it's important for both of that, I think it's important to try those new things. I've switched coaches a few times over the last 13 years, and I know people have been with coaches forever, which I think is an amazing thing. You've been on this journey with someone. There's also, I think, the potential to learn new things from different people. And so I always try to be like this sponge of, okay, maybe this person has a little bit different insight that I could gain from that. Or with swimming, I've had so many people help, and I've taken little nuggets from so many different people. So just trying to like take that in and use every little thing you can to find improvements. But knowing, in the end of the day, back to your question, like knowing what works for you and being confident with that, even if that means you have to say to your coach, like, well, no, I think I need to be doing more big gear. So for me coming in this, I'm using that as an example because I think that's one thing I've noticed I got away from it somehow. Like I used to do big gear efforts a lot on the bike, strength work, really working on like not worrying about watts and numbers, just literally being on my bike, pushing, pulling the crank at low RPM. You wouldn't race at that RPM, but it's developing that muscle that you will use to then push the cranks in the race. And I would like get caught up in numbers, like chasing watts, and all of a sudden I'm not doing 60 RPM because I'm not pushing as high watts as I think I should be. It's gone up to 80, and that's not the purpose of that drill or that effort or interval. So committing to, okay, not chasing watts, you're here for strength work. Like I've gotten back to a lot of that. Going into Coeur d'Alene, I did 5x5 minute big gear like twice a week for 4 weeks. And it was like, I could feel the difference on Coeur d'Alene. Like I was just on the bike, like, oh, yeah, like feel strong again. So I've known that from way back on my cycling days with Wadi on the velodrome, like training for that. But like different things you get away from, maybe something works. So just always going back. I think it's important to try new things, but then finding those things you're like, no, I know this works. Like hill repeats running, I think are a really big thing for anyone. But for me, really helps. You run hills and then you go out and run flat. You're like, oh yeah, crushing.
Conversely, what is something that you were like, I am never doing that again? Like, what is like something you've tried that you're like, nope, that one's not for me, apparently? Anything like that?
I mean, okay. I still get coaches giving me this. So if they're listening, I apologize because I still do them somewhat, but I still don't believe they're doing shit for me, but I still somewhat do them. So sorry for my cussing. Sorry, Mom.
Oh, no. It's yeah, your mom is the only person you'll offend. Well, everybody, we expect that Heather will be back with us here in a second. But now you're going to get a chance to see the Chris and Molly vamp for a second. Chris and Molly.
Show. Wait, she's here. Hang on.
She's back.
Hold tight, everybody.
Yeah, so she's coming back in. Diane, if you are here, we hope that you are not angry that HJ was just swearing.
Oh my God. Am I here?
You're here. You're back.
That was great. Don't worry about it.
Totally
no, yeah.
We were just talking to Diane.
Yeah, we were talking to your mom. So, that's another skill that Molly and I have picked up in the last year is the ability to just instantly go to vamp mode. Like, okay, so.
I was on my iPad and it was like saying low battery, even though the charger's in.
You were like, no.
So I'm on my phone. But...
Nice. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're back.
Oh my God.
So you were on the verge of like telling us like the bad advice that you've gotten all through.
It's not bad advice at all. I think it's good for some people's neuromuscular development, but I just cannot stand spin ups. I get these like 150 RPM and I cannot get my legs going over like 100. So I'm just like, probably because I'm just not good at them, but I'm like, I don't ride at a high cadence anyways. So like, I know they help and they can also flush your legs out and it like combats say like low cadence big gear work, but I'll get like 10-second spin ups and I'm just like out there like, oh God, this is a disaster. I think for like sprinters or certain maybe ITU racers or Olympic distance, like I can see where they would fit in. For me, I don't think they do much. Maybe if I'm feeling super flat and I just need to like get them going, or I want to go out and break a sweat, for instance, I'll do some like rev ups just to get the legs going, get the heart rate up, shut them back down. But when I see like neuromuscular development day, like high cadence, try to get over 150, and I'm like, what? I'll try to get over 100.
It's like back to the track. 150.
Yeah,
Exactly. Don't these people know that we're triathletes?
Yeah,
we're old.
There's no way I could do that. Right? There's no way. 120 is like my max.
Yeah.
So we are like running short on time, but there's one thing that I really wanted to ask about, because we've talked about this a little bit. But you are a dedicated journaler. We know this about you. I've seen your I get to go snowboarding journal. So can you tell us a bit about what journaling has, what role it's played in your training over the last several years?
Yeah, I have journals from literally every day. It's so funny when you think about it now. I could tell you where I was 12 years ago on what day doing what, because I literally have everything and notes on it, felt horrible, have my period. I could literally tell you the day probably. I'm oh my God, I remember feeling that way. I think it's just my, I used to have really bad OCD, again, as my parents would confirm. It's not as bad anymore. I still count a lot or count my steps. But I think journaling for me was a way of I write things down and I get it out and I can see it on paper lined up. I also am a planner. So every morning I write down the day ahead so I can cross it out. Okay, have coffee, cross it out. Drive to the pool, 8 to 8:20, cross it out. Swim, 8:30 to 10. So I just like that routine, scheduling, and then tracking. The journals too, it's always, I like to go back, remember a lead into a race, what felt good or what didn't. You can look back and be oh yeah, I remember being super relaxed before Placid. I was doing this. This worked for me. This workout worked. I felt really good with this. So maybe you would use that again. Or, okay, this didn't seem to work. Let me see what maybe caused this. So, and I'm a paper, books. I'm a reader, but I need the paperback book or hardcover book. I'm not a Kindle, or I have an iPad, but I need that in my writing down and holding the book. Just personal preference, but I do have all my journals. So
love it.
If anyone ever wants to take a look.
They are amazing. Seeing your training journals are so incredible with the different color coding. And then it brings you back to that time that you put the thing down, which is such a treasure.
Yeah, I think you remember it more than just entering in, say, a Training Peaks or a program. You remember it, writing it down.
Mm-hmm. If you could, it's probably going to be our last question. This hour goes by so fast. But if you could communicate something to the entire triathlon industry, if you could megaphone out to every triathlete, every person in the industry, what would you want to communicate to them?
Ooh, another tough one. I don't know. Let's do an off-road Ironman. Gravel meets Ironman.
Yeah.
Someone needs to do it.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I think triathlon needs that.
That's a great idea.
How would you complicate the swim? The bike and the run makes sense. Okay, gravel ride, some cool, awesome off-road run. What would you do to make an off-road version of the swim? What would that look like?
I feel if there were obstacles or something. I mean, I've seen photos of the Wurtels training in St. George before, and there's that rock thing right in the middle. If it was the St. George swim, but you had to literally get over that rock thing, dive back in.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
It's swim run.
Cliff jump. Yeah.
There's an Xterra somewhere where you have to run through a culvert. You swim to a culvert and then run through it and then get out the other side and into the next body of water. I've never done it, but I've seen pictures. It's awesome. That's so cool.
I wonder which one that is.
Yeah, I think it's one of the ones in Asia. I'm not sure why I remember that, but that's just in my brain. It's Xterra Saipan or something.
Right. Okay.
Something like that. But okay, so yeah, that is so industry people out there, you heard it, make it happen. Gravel Ironman with a obstacle course swim. I would do it. I know Molly would do it.
100%.
We would all be in. VT would do it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Heather Jackson, thank you so much for coming to detention and hanging out with us, other ne'er-do-wells. This has been a long time coming. We wanted to make sure that we had our kind of shit together before we had you on the show. And this is definitely going to go down as one of our most attended interviews for sure. I think we were like up near 50 people, which is like high watermark for us for a live show. So thank you so much for making the time. We know that you were like busting to get back to Bend, and we really appreciate it.
I know, I was so worried. We left Coeur d'Alene this morning, and I'm like, okay, must be back for 4:30. No, thank you guys so much for having me on. It's so fun and always awesome to see you guys. And thank you to everyone who tuned in.
Thanks,
a lot
everyone.
of people out there.
Yeah, seriously, everyone was as excited to talk to you as we were. This is amazing. We have lots of familiar faces, and everybody is sending their love to you. So yeah, lots of encouragement to attend hometown races and excitement for what comes next, which we can't wait to hear about too. So thank you again, and everybody out there, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your cheers, and here is to a faster and happier and healthier tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.